You're listening to Shameless Feminine Speaks with your host, modern day shaman and sister to all, Rebecca Haywood, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Here we are. Hello, now we're live. How you doing, everyone? My name's Rebecca Haywood, and I'm your host of Shameless Feminine Speaks, the only show on LA Talk Radio that is for all you shamelessly shameless women, men, ladies, and misfits ready for the feminine re-evolution. Yeah, and so I'm joined by my lovingly irreverent co-host, Sheena, who couldn't be in studio today, but whose lovely picture should be up on the screen here as she's on the phone with us today, broadcasting from her bed, darling. How are you?
Hello, beautiful soul. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing well. I had to drive like a girl from Boston to get here on time, but I did it.
Oh my goodness. You do have quite a drive, yes.
Yes.
And I have no drive, and yet here I am on my bed, perhaps because I have no drive. That would be fun.
But very good. Very well done, darling.
It's good to be here with you. I can't imagine missing being with you. So here I am. And I'm so thrilled at how this show is growing and has grown, and I'm so excited to see all the places where it goes.
Yeah, it's great. Our tribe is growing on Facebook. If you haven't joined us there yet, please do. We have a lovely Facebook group called Shameless Feminine Speaks, of course. So check us out there. And if I haven't invited you to be a member, just make the request and I will approve you, lickety-split. So we want you part of the tribe. I post all kinds of things, sometimes in between shows, when I'm able to. And we just have a wonderful, loving tribe there. So please join us there. You can catch the live stream there as well as engage in the convo live. When we're both here, we can kind of manage that chat room and take questions from you and address some of your stories and some of your pain points. Yeah. So speaking of...
I can manage the chat room now.
Oh, yeah, you can, can't you?
I sure can,
that fang-dangle technology. Gotta love
right?
it.
Gotta love it.
Gotta love it. And I hope the live link is working. It's still showing a black screen. Let's see. It's saying it isn't available right now. So if you don't mind sharing it again to at least to our Facebook group.
I sure will.
That would be great because it seems, it's saying this content isn't available right now. So some kind of snafu must have happened.
Well, you know what? It's a crazy time energetically, and I know that seems so cliched to say spiritually, but it really is energetically a crazy time.
Well, I would concur that technology hasn't been in my favor lately, last few days. So, it's felt somewhat like a Mercury retrograde, what people describe as that. So, it doesn't even seem to be behaving on LA Talk Radio's Facebook page. So maybe Ronan will cue in on that, and then we'll get the live link up and going.
The wonderful Ronan. And the good news is that even if they don't get the live link, because sometimes Facebook is just like the mom from the movie Carrie, you're always locked in the closet on prom night, you never know why. Always, Ronan's wonderful about always making copies of shows. So at times when my shows have gone down because of the lovely and benevolent Facebook, Ronan saves the day, and we get a beautiful link in the end. So.
Right. Okay. Well, here's hoping that we get that remedied for you all. And either way, we'll share it again later. So, so today's topic is the labor pains of our mothering. And so I really wanted to, it was kind of a play on Labor Day, right? Happy Labor Day, everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, I wanted to, this was really inspired, as always, kind of a continuation from last week's show. And where I left you all after that meditation was an invitation to do what I call the walk in two worlds, right? Where if you're finding an emotional aspect in yourself that wasn't quite ready to merge with that love, wasn't quite ready for the complete embrace, that you could do that walk in two worlds as its guardian. And so this topic really came to me as I was contemplating that, and how do we hold guardianship for ourselves? How do we mother ourselves? And, how well are we doing as humans in that? And in contemplating that, really looking around and seeing that actually that mothering especially of ourselves, is quite shamed. But mothering in general is really shamed in this society. It's kind of like the society shames it, but also begs for it from us, right?
Yeah.
I can think of a dear friend of mine and in her relationship, which happens to be with a man, that, there's this kind of push and pull between, over-mothering him, where then he complains that he feels emasculated or smothered, right? Which what happens, in my experience with men, once they feel that way, it triggers their own fight or flight response, and there was in that resistance, or feeling small. Or, we continue that. They allow us to over-mother them. Same thing with our children. And then we end up kind of disempowering them, right? And then we wonder, why aren't they standing on their own two feet, right? We've mothered them into disempowerment, into stagnation. And then there's, that flip side in relationship with the masculine, in my own experience, where then, I'm also then finding myself wiping their tears, right? When I do kick them out of the womb of my or the nest of my womb, right? Their tears of abandonment, like, where were you? I wanted you to take care of me. I wanted you to mother me, right? And I think whether we're feminine in relationship with a masculine or whatever our tendency is, we all, as we say on the show, we all carry the masculine and the feminine. And I think we all bump against that. I mean, I know for me, I carry that kind of don't tell me what to do. And, and I kind of fight even the men in my life taking care of me because of that, kind of sense of disempowerment, that I don't want to surrender to that disempowerment, at least in my history, right? So there's this kind of push and pull that I think we all do with that mothering, that maternal instinct inside of us, that caretaking that we do with each other. And then, on top of that, that shame that we place on mothering ourselves, taking care of ourselves, right? We kind of deem it as selfish, right, to take care of oneself. And even the spiritual community, preaches selflessness, and yet at the same time encourages self-care, right? So it gets a little confusing, right? And we also get it from our sisters, right? Where we're faulted for being, too caring, too nurturing, too soft, for prioritizing family over career, right? That is kind of stuck in the craw of some of them more extreme feminists, right? To flex our muscles,
Absolutely.
Against that family vibe, and against that mothering vibe. And yet, to me, gosh, and I know for you, Sheena, because you are just such a wonderful nurturing being, you've really embraced that superpower in yourself, that we both know that and experience the joy of allowing that maternal instinct to just flow from us, to not shame it, to not hold it back, to ask for forgiveness later, oh, you felt emasculated. I am so sorry. And yet I continue to love you. So, what are some of your kind of labor pains, if you will, with being in relationship with that superpower of your nurturing, beautiful self, Sheena?
Well, I think it's very ironic. Isn't it ironic? I think it's very ironic that it's oftentimes the people who get very defensive and the hair kind of stands up on their back. Mm-hmm. If you try to nurture or love them in any way, that then at the same time expect you to sort of act as their mother in all the ways that they don't sort of want to come in and hold up on their own.
Yes.
It seems to me it's a very interesting, it's like a child, right? A well-behaved child is oftentimes very good about accepting a mother's nurturing. A poorly behaved child, won't let mommy hug him or her, but then cries and whines if mommy leaves for 5 minutes for any reason and, still wants the breast at 21.
Right.
So I think that what you're talking about, and I, and I often, I'm going to say this on every show, I don't think it's a male thing. I certainly have dated men and women and found that it's just a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
That there's this, why are you trying to be so nice to me? Why are you trying to take care of me? What do you think, I can't take care of myself? But then at the same time, oh, could you just do this for me? And could you just do that for me? And I really think there's a personality type like the baby with bravado who is constantly wanting you to take care of them and mother them, but 100% on their terms, which often includes more of your energy and soul time being involved in the nurturing and less of your heart, which I think is sad.
Yeah, I think that absolutely it's not about masculine or feminine. It is about just really, I think, where each one is in relationship with that energy of nurturing, with that energy of self-love, right? Everything comes from, our relationship with ourselves, right? Our relationship with others is a reflection of our relationship with ourselves, right? So if we're not in a place of loving ourselves, of nurturing ourselves, of mothering ourselves, then of course we're going to be resistant to that in others and have rules and guidelines, right, for how and when others are allowed to nurture us, right? Just in the same way that we have our rules on loving ourselves, right? How much love are we willing to give ourselves is how much love we're willing to receive from another. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly the word, Rebecca, is receiving. There's a difference in, in order to really understand the beauty of someone wanting to be loving with you and nurturing with you, you have to be willing to sort of open up the hatch and receive. But sometimes receiving means, like a train track, right, that switches from one track to the next, a switcher on a train track. You have to allow yourself sometimes to switch off of outputting and allow yourself to take on some input, allow something to come in, turn off project and turn on receive.
Yes.
That's a hard thing for some people. Some people want to, in all different kinds of relationships with you, especially I think in romantic partnerships, they want to 100% dictate every second of every day of the relationship and tell you exactly how it's going to go. And they want you to do all the things they want you to do, but none of the things they don't want you to do. And then they don't understand why there's not more of a connection.
Right. Absolutely. And it is in our willingness to receive love, bottom line, when it comes to
Absolutely.
Whether it's our relationship with ourselves or our relationship with others, it really is about that willingness to receive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
especially nurturers, those of us that are nurturers. I mean, it really is where we live, is helping people and taking care of people. And we love that. Mm-hmm. And we feel not complete if we're not helping someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that as long as we're acting from that little bit of a wounded place, then we're giving out of a need to be needed, right? We can be caretaking out of that need to be needed, and kind of out of that fear of losing their love. Like, this is how I win their love, is by taking care of them, and then everybody loves mama. Right? Everybody loves mama. Or they're in that state of need, right? So they're reliant on me, so they'll never leave me, right? So absolutely, I think that is a wonderful practice for everybody listening, whether you think of yourself as the maternal type or not, or you're on the other spectrum of pushing against it. Really set a practice for yourself to just make that intention to receive. Just receive. Go get a massage. That's one of the wonderful ways to just receive in this world quite easily, and to not have a story about it. You may not even know this therapist, right? But you can just practice receiving that touch from them. What other ways have you practiced and kind of shifted yourself from that giving, and stepping into the receiving, Sheena?
It took me a long time to realize that it was okay to ask others for help. It's a very hard thing, and it's a very hard thing. It's very easy for me to be vulnerable with people as long as it doesn't involve me having to show weakness. It's okay. I'm wonderful at telling a story of weakness of mine in retrospect on the air or in print. But when something's really going on with me at a time, like something is really going on with me now, I'm terrified to tell people that I'm in a place of not being 100%. I think it's sort of some strange wounded animal thing. I just think someone will take me out back and shoot me. It's been very hard for me, and I've learned with many people in my life this summer that by not showing that vulnerability, people just assume there's nothing wrong with you. So when they don't see you somewhere, they just think, oh, well, I guess she just doesn't care. Right. Because I haven't been really honest with people. And it's been really an effort for me. You know, I tucked right through my mother's death and a lot of things in the last 5 years. And I find it's very hard for me with most people to say, this is kind of a rough time in my life, and I'm having a rough time. So that, for me, that's been a very, very difficult thing for me, and a very important lesson in receiving. And I think a lot of people are like that because we're taught now, especially with social media. And I know in the entertainment business, I was weaned on it as an actor, you know, never let them see a sweat. That if you show anyone that you're not doing well, then everyone will shut you down and ignore you. And the sad thing is some people do. But that's life. Some people are always going to be like that. So it's been, you know, an interesting time for me to explain to people that, hey, I'm here and I'm working and I'm helping people and I'm working as a counselor and I'm fine at that. There are some things I can't do right now, but I'm going to be okay. And finding that balance with people is very, very difficult. But I found, you know, I can tell you in my relationships and my romantic relationships with people, it was very hard for me to find that balance between giving and receiving, to the point where oftentimes I think I picked people that, you know, were not givers. So I gave all the time and then felt very empty. And that's another pattern I've worked very hard to move past in the last 5 years or so.
Right, absolutely. And we will attract that, you know, if we are that more maternal, giving, caretaker type, we will attract people who are very willing to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a good reflection for you in your own lives, all y'all out there, of, you know, just taking a look at the relationships that you're in, whether they're your intimate partnerships or, you know, the friendships, and just kind of who are you attracting into your lives? What type of people, you know, givers or takers, or is there a balance there? Is there an even exchange? And if there isn't, you know, implementing that practice of receiving, of asking for help, you know, and, you know, in your situation, Sheena, that so many people are in with, you know, physical struggles, right? That, you know, spirit works in mysterious ways that, you know, if we really need to learn how to receive, we need to learn how to ask for help, the spirit will give us that opportunity, right? And I definitely think that, you know, you've opened in such a beautiful way to your vulnerability as a power. You know, we've talked a little bit about vulnerability as a superpower on our surrender show, Painting Our White Flag Red. And yeah, I definitely see that you've really opened in that very powerful way to receiving, and very mindfully, like wisely choosing who you receive from, because you are that psychic queen, that psychic queen, Sheena.
Yeah, exactly. Works on everybody's life but mine, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. And I think that came from being such a giver and being in situations where I attracted people who either needed help constantly or were takers, that then I would feel empty and need something to fill my tank.
Right.
And it's like when you don't stop at the gas station, and you don't stop at the gas station, and then finally the only gas station there is before you run out of gas is the really cheap gas, and then it just makes your car sputter the whole time. When I finally hit the breaking point of saying, now I really need someone to give back to me, I followed anybody who was giving to me. But some people don't give to give. Some people give with consequence
Mm-hmm.
and with there's a list of what they want in exchange for their gift.
Right.
And so I attracted a small group of people that were very unhealthy, that acted like no one in your life is ever taking care of you, and now I'm going to be the one to take care of you. And they took care of me all right, I'll tell you. So it wasn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't I'll take care of you. It's I'll give you this and that if you do exactly what I want and be exactly who I want. And if you do anything wrong, then I flip out. And I've had to learn what that looks like too. I mean, everything is, the best thing in the world, and I know you know this because you're one of my dearest friends, the best thing in the world that ever happened to me as a human was my work as a spiritual counselor and as a minister, because it made me realize like how much of my friendships were really just me ministering to people and counseling people and having there be nothing in return. People would call me to solve all their problems and then not call me for 3 months and then call me again when there was a problem. And they still do it. They just find out that they don't get such a quick response from me, if any, because now I have all of my wonderful clients and all my students that's my job, is to help them through their problems. A friendship is not, I only call you when I need something, whether it's a monetary thing, a material thing, or it's just help,
Right.
So I had to learn not to mother the world. My mama used to say that Scorpios were all universal mothers, which makes me think of you because you're a Scorpio. I'm not. She used to say, I used to run the universe, but then I gave my gavel back. And I think that's pretty, because she too at one point in her life as she got older just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I can't be the person who takes care of everyone anymore.
Yeah, well, and I think, for me, it's not so much that I gave up that mothering aspect, as I know your mother certainly didn't give that up. I think that there comes an equilibrium when when we open ourselves to that truth, that kind of true generosity versus a self-sacrificing generosity, right? Where we become part of the equation, right? It's not just a going out. It's going out and it's coming back in. And when we don't feel it coming back in, just as naturally as the moon wanes, like so does that generosity. It wanes with it. And if we're really in touch with that true equilibrium, that balanced act of mothering and that maternal instinct, we feed and we are fed by that giving. And so I think that there's a shift that, we're all really making on this planet. And I'll say right now, but I feel that we've been building up to this for some time and really reorienting ourselves to that reciprocity of giving, of loving, that, I am the love that I give, and recognizing where it's actually being received, right? When our love or whatever it is that we're giving isn't being received, right? It's kind of like someone not opening an actual gift that we're giving them. They just put it to the side, and it's like, where's the fun in that? The energy just kind of deflates out of the moment. And, or much like a seed, continually being planted but not growing, right? We're not going to keep putting our seed there. It's not natural, right? We're going to find fertile soils that are welcoming of that seed. So, I think that there's a shift that we're all making in that. And I think really what's shifting is that wounded self, right? Where we're really starting to recognize ourselves as source versus having to pull from something outside of ourselves. We're in cahoots with spirit more than ever. And we're recognizing ourselves as that source more than ever. And, that's really the wound, that wound of separation that I talk about so often here on this show, that separation from our own divinity, from knowing ourselves as love. And, when we get back to that garden in ourselves, then, the abundance just flows. It doesn't mean, though, that our moon doesn't naturally wane. It does, and we go inward and we recharge, or we redirect our light to where it is being reflected again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, So
so important. And so important that we find a place where we learn, Rebecca, to set healthy boundaries with people so that then we understand where our safe places to just mother freely, so that we can be the nurturers that we really want to be, but with the right people. And because, you know, nurturing it's a very important part of me, and it's not that I do it to feel loved or I do it to get something. It's because it innately in me. Like, some people have to run every day. I have to love people every day. That's my thing. If I don't love people every day, I don't feel like it's been a day. I don't care if I get anything back, but I need to have some people in my life I get something back from, and I need to not be constantly shielding myself against the toxicity that comes. So I have to find the right places to put my love. But I always say, if I was independently wealthy, my job would just be hugging people. I would just go places, hug people, tell everyone it's going to be okay, sit at people's beds while they were passing, and just you know, go to weddings and hug people, go to kids' birthday parties and hug them and bring balloons. Like, I'm that silly person that like, that's my idea of like the most wonderful life in the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm in agreement with you there. Yeah, there's nothing like giving, you know. There's nothing that fills me up more than giving, than being in service, than sharing my love. And yeah, mothering where it's needed, where it's wanted, where it's received. And yet I do have to be mindful, because of that tendency towards caretaking, of, you know, when I am in a place of need, right, which happens, even to us healers. We get in a place of need, even to us spiritually evolved beings. There are those moments where we're struggling, you know, as I've shared on this show and on my social media posts. You know, I went through a really hard time shortly after moving here, with an old trauma surfacing for me. And wow, I was depleted. I was depleted energetically, and I was very much in my little 8-year-old. And that's how old I was when this trauma happened. And I was very much that little 8-year-old. And she was, you know, she was looking for a hand to hold. She was looking for a protector. She was looking for a guardian. And most of the time I could give that to her. You know, I could be that guardian for her. I could do that walk in two worlds. But there were some times where, you know, I really needed to reach out on her behalf, you know, and ask for help. And there were times where I wasn't quite as clean, where I did slip into that smothering of mothering. In my relationships, you know, where I was displacing my own need for love onto them, right? I was feeling the lack. I was feeling the empty. And so I was trying to fill up by the giving, which normally does fill me up. But instead of giving from a place of true selflessness, I was giving from a place of selfish, you know, of asking for the return, of needing them to love me back, right? So so it's really important that we're aware of, you know, where we're at as caretakers, as maternal sorts, and make sure that we keep our cup full, right? The true generosity comes when that cup is full. It only overfloweth if it's full. And so if we're depleted, you know, in any aspect of ourselves, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, we're depleted, and our cup isn't overflowing, then we're not going to be organically giving from that place of love, from that place that is sourced and resourced again and again. And therefore, that giving is going to be a little less clean. It's going to be that smothering. It's going to be that clingy. It's going to be, you know, even lash out as that emasculating force, right? Let me do it for you. And, you know, so if we can just be mindful of that and then redirect, right? Then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not the one playing mother here. I'm the one that needs mother. Like, the mother needs the mother, right? And it's a beautiful, beautiful place of surrender to admit that vulnerability in ourselves. And there's nothing weak about it. There's nothing weak about it to be in a place of need. Not whatsoever.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's I think when you find the people that, Rebecca, are truly your tribe. Because those are the people who know just when to fill you up when you need to be filled up so that you can go on and help others.
Yes, absolutely. The people that, that do show up for you, that aren't suddenly feeling abandoned by the fact that you're asking for their help instead of vice versa, right? That sounds very much like the sort you were describing in your life, of that aspect of the people who are essentially keeping tabs. Like, sure, I'll take care of you, but, sign here, right? I wrote a post recently about love freely, like, let's toss out our contracts,
Exactly.
Yeah. Our love is not for lease. It doesn't require contracts when it's truly unconditional. Right. So, yeah. And, it's interesting for me in looking back at my personal history with kind of mothering and giving and being a caretaker. For me, I would say it manifested more in the emotional realm because there was someone in my family who really was in need, when I was a young girl. So instead of showing my own need when I was in legit need, I would put on the happy face. I would basically just take care of myself from a very young girl. Put on the happy face, and nobody look over here. Everybody help that person because they need the love more than I do. And so, we can look back in our childhood and see our relationship with caretaking and where we birthed that from. Speaking of labor pains, right? Where did that birth from inside of you? Because for me, I definitely, throughout my adulthood, would kind of constantly just take care of myself emotionally. Emotionally, that was not where I was willing to necessarily reach out and ask for that helping hand. Physically, I had no problem really asking for that, other than I was a tough tomboy. But yeah, emotionally, I really was flying solo. And that was something that I'm so thankful that I reoriented, that I shifted. And I remember it was actually a healer really pointing out to me, in the healing realm, we talk about the left side as the receiving and the right as the giving. And he really pointed out how unbalanced I was, and just did this exercise with me of just basically just laying there and receiving through the left side of my body. And I was so amazed at how difficult it was. I could feel this barrier in my heart, right in my heart, that it wasn't in my hand. My hand, I could feel the energy flowing up my arm, but right at the heart, it was like there was something that I had shut down so long ago, innocently shut down so long ago, in the name of caretaking another in my family, right? So, take a look at your childhood, everyone who's watching. Look and see where that birthed in you, where that caretaker, where the mother comes from in you. And it isn't necessarily about how you were mothered. It's about how you allowed yourself to be mothered, right? And how you developed yourself as a mother, right? And you will learn, by looking at your mother, how you learned to mother. And you'll also learn a lot from, as a woman, looking at the relationship with your father, right? Because, we witness when we have the coupled parents that we witness that of how mom mothers dad, and vice versa. So we learn a lot about mothering from our parents, but it's really about how we birth that within ourselves, how we kind of chose our role in the family as caretaker, as receiving end or giving end of that. I actually wrote a little bit. I tend to write before these shows just to organize my thoughts. And, that's lately how the channel really flows for me is, with the pen. La pluma dorada, and is what Sarita used to call me, the golden plume. And so I was writing today, and I actually posted it on my social media. And I was really amazed at where this took me. Sheena, I like to talk about that ancient feminine shame. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, God, here we go.
Here we go.
No, I agree with you. It took me a long time to realize what feminine shame was. You had a leg up on me here. It took me, it's only in the last 3 years or so that I've really thought, oh, God, yeah, that really is a thing.
Yeah, it really is a thing. And it's, and I'm still exploring it. I mean, each of these shows I kind of stretch and I reach for it to see, like, how did this come from that ancient feminine shame, from the centuries of violence against women, and from that time that we cast Eve out of the garden. And, this time I really didn't have to reach for it. And as it was flowing out of me onto the page or onto the computer screen, I was actually surprised by it. But, where it took me was actually, now just bear with me here, okay, because it's going to sound really kind of like a stretch and kind of off topic,
Okay.
but it isn't. It really isn't when you play it through. So, when we cast Eve out of the garden, right, she was reformed by man as the Virgin Mother, right? And I mean, think about it. So they just really couldn't hang with letting women, experience the pleasure that precipitated the holy birth, right? And they couldn't even really allow the pleasure in, or allow sex to be the holy birth that it is, right? Sex is a beautiful thing, and yet it's been demonized, right? And so they kind of separated the wheat from the chaff and pretended they never met, right? And we, as a result, have kind of compartmentalized and separated woman into two categories, right? The self-sacrificing virgin or the self-serving slut, right? And, if you look at this, playing it forward, our relationship with pleasure, and it translates beyond sexual pleasure, of course, and yet, as a result, women have landed in this place of not allowing themselves pleasure, of not allowing themselves permission to seek their own pleasure, to take care of their own needs. That has been demonized, right? Where we must be the self-sacrificing virgin, the Virgin Mother, right? Or else we are nothing more than the self-serving slut, And it sounds really
Right.
extreme, but I mean, just like chew on it for a moment, like feel that for a moment, just relating all of this, the shaming of our maternal instinct and how the world shames it out of us, but also begs for it from us, right? They want both the virgin and the slut, really, right? But that's a topic for another show. But really, when we bring it back to this allowing of our own pleasure, very much in that allowing of receiving love, of receiving pleasure, of following our bliss, how often do we as women, or do we, as men, ladies, misfits, allow ourselves to really follow our pleasure, right? I think it's such an interesting viewpoint on it, and it just kind of set off a light bulb in me and kind of reoriented my cells in a way. So I invite you all to sit with it, even though it may seem off topic or even off-putting to you, to speak into that, to relate it all the way back to sexual pleasure and Eve being cast out of the garden. And yet, pleasure. I have a hard time saying no to pleasure. I have a hard time not following my pleasure now. That wasn't always true. And yet I have really learned how to follow my heart, follow my bliss, to move towards things that feel good and away from things that don't feel good. And my body has become a really good gauge of that for myself. Whereas before, when I was broken, when I wasn't in that place of self-love, when I wasn't in that place of allowing myself to receive, or even allowing myself really to be in complete ecstasy with pleasure, then I was in that broken state, and I would give from a place of need, and I would resist others taking care of me. So, I think it's a really, there's something in this for all of us to really ponder and to take it all the way back to that really old shame, and to take a look at your relationship with pleasure. And I think that in that, we kind of land in this beautiful place with, our spiritual community, right? Preaching the selflessness, and
Sure.
yet encouraging self-care. Like we're reaching for that, like self-care, take care of yourself. And yet let's be selfless, right? It's a little confusing for us. Like, what does that mean to be selfless? What does it mean to be in service? And to me,
Right.
it's, it's not an abandonment of the self. And I know that you've come through your journey as a healer of really recognizing you cannot abandon yourself as a healer, right?
No.
You simply
No.
cannot, right? If
No.
you do, then you're not actually available to them. So if you're not following your bliss, if you're not allowing life to fill you up, whether that's through your fellow humans or just through the beautiful sunshiny day here in California, if you're not letting yourself fill up, your cup won't overfloweth, right? And then you will be kind of force feeding your generosity onto the world and thus depleting yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when you talk about our beautiful New Age community,
Mm-hmm.
our metaphysical community. There's such a diverse nature to humans, and I think you never see that more than when you look at their spirituality. And like you said, on one hand, you're taught to be very self-sacrificing, but you're also taught to be nurturing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's also very interesting that in many instances within that community, you are taught to be very self-indulgent and at the same time be very giving to others. Like you're supposed to be this, on one hand, you're supposed to be this euphoric light that spreads your love around the earth and around the universe. But on the other hand, it's always like, well, don't forget you first, you first, you first, you first, in a very self-indulgent kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the problem with people is that this would have to be a much longer show if I was going to really answer that. But I think one of the problems with people, and we are relatively a new species on the earth compared to some, so we're sort of special toddlers, is that there is such a heavy dichotomy that comes with us, and there's such an internal push and pull.
Yes. Yes.
I want to nurture, but I also want to completely clock all the time how much I'm giving away. Well, at that point, you're thinking your love, and if you're thinking your feelings, you're not really feeling them because you're thinking with your head and not your heart.
Right.
And I want to be very spiritual, and I want to be immersed in the everything, but I don't want to lose myself. And we don't, the truth is that universe just kind of has their arms folded and they're just kind of like, whatever with y'all. Because the truth is, completely immersing yourself in the everything, completely releasing, is when you have more control of your life and more individuality than you ever had before.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fighting that internal dichotomy of, well, if I mother someone, then are they going to think I'm smothering them? And they're going to be too much? Should I not do this? And the bottom line is, you should do exactly just do you. You should be exactly who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and not spend your life second guessing or worried that you're not going to please all of the people all of the time if you are too emotional, effusive, loving. I tell this story all the time, that I had a friend who is, no longer part of my life, and her big thing, and I say her because I'm supposed to know it's not always men that are the bad guys. Her big thing was that I shouldn't say I love you on Facebook, because if I say I love you on Facebook, then people in my life who I really love don't understand that they're special. So, being the empath I am, I thought, oh, what did I do? So I went around and I asked all my best friends, when I say I love you on Facebook to people, do you feel like I love you any less? And everybody was sort of like, no. So that was a thing in her, that somehow she felt like there was a limit to how much you could love someone. And that, if I said I love you to 50,000 people on Facebook, somehow I was taking away some of my love from her. So, I think these are things that we wrestle with when we're givers and when we're motherers. And like you said, when everybody wants to love mommy, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has to realize that mommy has enough love for everyone, all of her children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, including herself. Including herself, her most important child, And I think when anything is out of balance, it begins to carry, it picks up that double-edged sword of duality, right? Where now we're in that push and pull. And I really feel that that's what you're speaking into, is that that aspect of where, the broken heart is fractured, and now it's there's where there was one, there are two. And so we're really dancing in that duality, and with that duality of, giving versus receiving versus, right? Versus, rather than seeing them as a connected circle, and experiencing them as the connected circle. And, I'm curious, I'm not even sure, we got a little late start today, so I think we get to go on a little bit longer. But, I'm curious to get your feedback on that ancient feminine shame piece that I brought up. But I know for me that if you can connect to your pleasure, and again, it's not relegated to sexual pleasure, although that's a wonderful place and a fun place to practice. It's really just connecting to that pleasure and allowing yourself to allow yourself the pleasure and to follow your bliss. To me, that cuts a straight line right down the middle of that duality, where it's no longer this thinking game of, am I giving too much? Am I scaring these guys off or these women off? Am I, over-mothering? Am I under-mothering? Am I depleting myself? Does my cup overfloweth? Is this all happening organically? Am I being selfish or selfless? And right, that is the game of the mind that you're never going to win, and you're always going to be in that dichotomy. Versus, right, following your bliss, following your heart, allowing that pleasure to guide you. And it really will guide you to those people who are receiving, your true generosity. It will feel good. And where people are, maybe taking advantage or just kind of sucking you dry, or you're letting yourself, right, you're over-mothering and you are giving from a place of need, then it won't feel good, right? You'll notice that. So if you let pleasure be your guide, it really cuts a straight line right through the heart of that duality of the broken heart around our maternal instinct. Yeah.
So true. So true. And let your feminine shame go. Let it go.
Yeah.
You don't have to always apologize for yourself just because you're a girl. You don't have to always apologize for yourself.
That's right.
You have as much right. You're a human being on the earth, and you have as much right to anything as anyone else on the earth.
Yeah.
And you don't have to work twice as hard. I mean, you might have to work twice as hard three-dimensionally in the world, culturally and sociologically, to get where you need to go. But you don't need to put, 10 times as much emotional strain on yourself, feeling like you're not deserving of everything that every human being is deserving of.
Absolutely.
And if we're ever going to balance out the genders, however many genders there will be at that time, we need to stop this feeling as women like, oh God, I should just be lucky to have this job because there aren't that many women in radio, or, oh, I should be lucky that, to have this house because nobody really wants to date a fat woman. I mean, all these things that kept me in relationships that should have lasted 3 months for a decade because I felt like I should just be so thankful to have anything. And that means work relationships, friendships, we do that to ourselves. Men don't do that to themselves. They don't, because they're not culturalized to do so, and good for them.
Yeah, good for them. Exactly. We can learn from that. And as you know, on my last retreat to Mexico, to the pyramids in Mexico, which was an all women's trip, that the assignment that we got downloaded from the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl was to bring all the men to him and leave them there. And then we had this beautiful journey that was really just our direct relationship with the feminine inside of us, the feminine all around us. We weren't, and we owned everything. Like every wound inside of us, that victim stance, everything was now ours. There was no more man to point to. There was no patriarchy to point to, even though the objective as given by Quetzalcoatl was to break from the patriarchy. We were doing it without the patriarchy, not in the shadow of the patriarchy. We weren't in opposition to the patriarchy. We were simply standing in that feminine and letting her hatch open, right? In such a beautiful way. And you put such great words to it in that show where you really just nailed what that journey was all about, that, that we are in a time where, we women, or all of us as a people, women and men, that we need to really kind of go into the feminine, not as a polarity of the masculine, but just who is she all by herself, right? Who is she not in relationship to the masculine, right? For as long as we look in that reflection of the patriarchy, then that's where we're going to be bumping up against. And the best we can do is polarize ourselves against it, right? And kind of rebel against it to try and break that mirror. But, go inside, go into that feminine energy inside of you. Where does she lead you? Not in relationship to the masculine, but in relationship to herself, right? In relationship to the divine mother, to the earth mother, to the heart mother that is in all of us, right? So, I love kind of where we're landing today in this, in a beautiful invitation of following your pleasure and of really diving into the mother inside of you. Ultimately, how do we heal any shame against our maternal instinct, against our generosity and our superpower of nurturing, but is to nurture ourselves. So take this time, get selfish. Don't be afraid about what it means to your spiritual community or to your family or to anyone. Get selfish. For a time, get selfish. Give yourself complete permission to just look out for you, to put you as number one and see what you learn from that. That's what I had to do in my life to really break those spells. And it worked beautifully. So that's my invitation to all of you. And as always, I'm available for private sessions if you want more discourse on this. I do phone sessions with people. I also do hands-on healing with people if you need a little extra loving. Sheena is also available for private sessions. You can find me pretty much anywhere on social media at Shaman Sister and my website, RebeccaHaywood.com. And Sheena, where can people find you?
I'm at SheenaMetalSpiritual.com. I am raising yourvibration.com. My nonprofit movement of peace, love, kindness, and unity is at raisingthevibration.org. I think I'm the only Sheena Metal in the world if you Google me. And I do an interfaith service at the Founders MTC Church once a month. Rebecca's been a wonderful part of it. I'm a staff pastor there, and my night is called Saturday Night Spiritual, and we're at SaturdayNightSpiritual.com. Come and find me and get a hug, because I just live to give hugs to people.
Yeah, your sermons are beautiful, and they're not just sermons. There's music, there's other speakers, there's poetry, there's everything. It's wonderful. So I highly recommend going to those Saturday Night Spirituals. And also, we didn't get the link on screen today, but there is that workshop that I'm doing in Yakima, Washington, coming up called Developing Emotional Presence. So you got a taste of that last week. So you can check out that workshop. But please spread the word. I'll also be doing private sessions while I'm in the area. So we love you all. Tune back in next week, same time, same bat channel, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific. We love you all. Bye. Now I'm going to press the magic button.
You're listening to Shameless Feminine Speaks with your host, modern-day shaman and sister to all, Rebecca Haywood, right here on LA Talk Radio.